Hello, John.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's Michael Persh calling from Adelaide in Australia.
Hello, Michael.
Janine set me up for a chat.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for giving me some of your time. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to say hello.
That's fine. That's all right. What's the weather like down there?
Are you sure you want to know?
Well, it's got to be better than here, mate.
It's mid 30s, absolutely lovely. I've spoken to quite a few folks in the UK in the last few weeks, and everyone's snowed in and freezing. I was speaking to the guys from Uriah Heat last night, and they were very keen to. They're coming here in a couple of months and keen to come and thaw out.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, we've had a bit of a rough winter, but you've had a lot of rain down there, haven't you?
We have indeed. Queensland is just about underwater. It's only just starting to come good now. It's been an unbelievable summer.
No, that's bad. That's real bad. I mean, we've obviously seen the pictures over here, and I was under the impression I think Melbourne got a bit. And didn't you get some down there as well, or not?
Not so much here. Country Victoria and Country New South Wales had quite a bit of flooding as well, but it was certainly Queensland that got hammered.
Yeah, that was a disaster. I mean, it's probably got something to do with the water courses and not enough dams or something. We've mucked about with the environment here as well, so we get a lot more floods that cause damage than I think they used to.
It's sad events indeed, but what can you do?
I don't know, just try and get people to live where it doesn't flood, I suppose.
Well, I guess so. Well, I know you have lots of friends in Australia, and I'm sure they'd be very pleased to hear that you're thinking about the terrible things that have been happening, especially in Queensland lately.
Yeah, most of my mates actually live in Sydney. I think they've been let off the hook a bit.
Not so bad there indeed.
No, absolutely.
And
anyway, what can I do for you?
Well, your new CD, Streets of Heaven, lobbed on my desk, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't stopped playing it. It's absolutely magnificent, and you must be really happy with it.
Yes, I was very pleased the way it came out. Actually, it was it seems a little while ago now, but it was one of those times in my life when suddenly I felt like writing a lot of things down, and I suppose it's because I haven't really done much writing over the years because I've been busy painting. A lot of ideas came together really quite quickly. So it was a very creative period of about sort of 6 months. Putting it together.
And the thing that grabbed me firstly about the whole sound of the album, John, was it took me back to the ambience that the first Dire Straits album had and Communique had. There was a certain chemistry about those two records, and this has a similar feel to it that I can't really put my finger on.
Well, I think that's funny enough. You're not the only person who said that. I didn't really do that consciously, but when I think about how those things happen, it's probably because essentially that kind of way of playing music is pretty deeply rooted in my musical heritage. So it's the natural way that I play the guitar and play the bass. So these are the sort of the ground rules, if you like, putting the tunes together. And I worked with Guy Fletcher. He helped me produce the record, and then I had quite a few mates from the Straits came in, and so I suppose it's probably not unlikely that it's going to have a little bit of that sort of feel to it. But it's the way I play music.
And the other thing that really struck me, John, was as you mentioned, your guitar playing is absolutely lovely, and it reminded me. And I guess, folks, the general public doesn't really know you as a guitar player, but it really did stand out for me on this album.
Yeah, well, I suppose really, when the Straits stopped doing any, serious work together, and in the early 90s. If I ever sat down and played music, which was still pretty regularly, or played with mates, it would probably be on the guitar. Although one never forgets riding the bicycle. It's that sort of idea. With the bass, you never forget what you do on that. But I suppose I was quite interested in developing as a guitar player, and most of the songs were written on the guitar or the piano, and so you start to develop your own way of playing, I suppose, and I've really enjoyed the challenge, because on the last record I did with Greg Pearl. I don't know whether you heard any of that.
Yes, I have.
I started to sort of work a bit more on the guitar on that. And, the thing is, if you sit down, watching the telly one day, you don't pick the bass up to play, I pick up the guitar. So you become quite familiar with it after a while.
You mentioned Guy Fletcher, who had a big hand in the record, and you've got Chris White, which is an old partner in crime from way back, playing the saxophone as well, and what a fine player he is.
Yeah, he's great, actually. We did some live work before, up until about July last year, and Chris came out on the road with me, which was great fun, and we had a really good time, actually. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure Chris came with you guys on the 86 tour of Australia, if I recall.
Actually, was it the 86 tour? I've got a feeling it was the On Every Street tour, the last one we did, or did he do that one as well? I can't remember. That's terrible, isn't it? You're probably right. I'm usually wrong in these matters because my memory is pretty appalling, but I suspect you're probably right. He's a very fine player, and also he's a really a lot of people don't know. He's a really good arranger. If I play an idea on the guitar, for instance, the brass part on "Tell Me" was originally on the guitar. That then I'll play that, and he'll just write it down because he's one of these chaps that understands how you write music down, and then he comes back with a brass section, and they just whack it down. So he's it's really easy working with him, and he's also such a nice bloke. But it's very nice to rekindle these relationships, to be honest. And fellow Guy and I are working together at the moment on another project. While he's got a bit of time off from Mark.
Magnificent. And you mentioned the tune "Tell Me" then, and that was one of the standouts for me on the album. It sort of started off, I thought, with even a Mexican sort of Spanishy feel to it, but then went into quite a Celtic feel at the end. It was a very interesting song indeed, how it changed.
Yeah, well, I really wanted that sort of Tijuana sort of feel to it, because when I wrote it, I imagined these big sort of jumbo guitars and accordions and fiddles and all that kind of stuff with a sort of a nice tight brass section, like the old Herb Alpert type sort of feel, And so I think we managed to sort of get that, but then completely organically towards the end of the record, the accordion player and the fiddle player just kept playing. Because I'd recorded the guitar to carry on, and the brass had all stopped and all the rest of it, and the fiddle player and the accordion player just kept playing, and so we just sort of kept it.
It's turned out exceptionally well indeed. It's a lovely tune, and you really have captured that mariachi band sort of feel. It really jumps out of the speakers.
Well, the great thing about making music, to be honest, especially when you're not under any pressure, is you can make the kind of music you want to make. You know what I mean? When you're not under the pressure of a record company to say, we want it to sound like this, or we want you to do this sort of thing that you did before, you can pretty much please yourself, which is actually a really wonderful position to be in. And, I'm not talking about from a self-indulgent point of view, I'm talking about from a sort of creative point of view. And that's why, there's perhaps not an obvious sort of single on the album, because I still have this rather old-fashioned way of wanting, to be able to put a record on at the beginning. I call them records still. just get you get the energy of the of the record playing, a bit like a gig, So you put the tracks together and the atmosphere together in such a way that you can put it on at the beginning and just let it run.
Yes, indeed, and
so
lovely.
So often these days you come across records where you've just got to pick out the single or pick out the track you like, and the rest is, not perhaps as appealing as it probably should be. And I think that the way that a lot of people listen to music these days, I mean, I'm not criticising it, it's just a modern distribution of music, with iTunes and the fact you can cherry pick songs from a record and don't have to worry about the rest of it. It has this sort of rather fragmenting feeling to music, and in some ways perhaps makes it a bit more disposable.
Indeed.
Well, I mean, when the whole idea of buying a record was, when we were all growing up, was the fact that it was quite a cherished object. You'd save up to go and buy it, and it was a big 12-inch sort of sleeve with artwork and all the rest of it on, and you could see who played on it and the pictures of the people and everything. And now people just go onto iTunes with their iPod, plug the iPod into the computer, press a few buttons, and the track comes down. They often don't even know what the people look like. They certainly don't know who's playing on it, and they just buy the song. And it's sort of slightly separating people from the journey of how it was made.
Oh, and I think it also, I don't think folks that do that are getting the joy out of that product as we got, like you said, from an album back when you cherished it and you listened to it over again and studied every inch of the cover, and it was just a thing to cherish indeed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm certainly not trying to sit here like some boring old fart. I think it's just a fact of life.
Yes, so true.
The whole way that music is now distributed and the way music is shared is a fantastic bit of technology. I mean, I love it. I think it's absolutely incredible. But I personally still like to think of, making a record or now making a CD, and I still do. And even though, the vast majority of the sales that I get are probably down the wire from Amazon or something.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the French feel or you mentioned your accordion player, and one track with a real French feel is No Way to Say Goodbye, which I like a lot indeed.
Yeah. Well, that was trying to capture that rather. I don't know whether you've spent any time in Paris, but to try and get that, rather Parisian sort of lazy sort of French feel to it, the cafe sort of feel to it. And the breakup of a love affair and all the rest of it. It's great to experiment, and I got to play with Andy Cutting, who's a wonderful accordion player. Well, I think they call them melodians, and you get to ask really real quality players to come into the studio, and it's a great pleasure, and just to hear them sit down and for the first time just join in. It just adds a real nice sparkle to the music you're trying to make.
And there's some very nice background vocals on that track as well, with a lady named Polly Wood.
Yeah, Polly. Yes, she came out on the road as well with me. It was a bit of a trial. I did throw her into the deep end a bit. I had to teach her a whole lot of Straits songs in about 2 afternoons, and she got a bit flustered. But she's a really lovely singer. She's actually she's a good writer herself. And in fact, when we were on the road, we did one of her songs. She's at the moment just trying to get an album together with another girl and doing some writing and things. So I think she's probably got a little bit of a career ahead of her.
Indeed. And Mark features on a couple of tunes, the title track.
Well, yes, I had to let him have a bit of a go. He was I actually made the album in his studio. He's got a new studio now in London, which is a very fine place to be. And I just rang him, and I said there's a couple of tracks on this album which I think would benefit from a bit of tinkling on them, and he said, oh, it would be a pleasure. So he just popped down one afternoon and did the business, and I'm pleased to say he was quite complimentary about them.
Very nice indeed. And Only Time Will Tell was the other one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were still very close. I mean, despite being on the road for 30 odd years or something, we're still very, very close friends.
Well, on the times that you were working with Dire Straits, you fellas worked very hard indeed, especially in the latter years. You must have encircled the globe more times than you could count.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of fun, I have to say. I mean, I'm not going to say it's hardship. I mean, it's anybody else who's experienced the joys of standing in front of people who want to listen to what you're doing and playing, and being able to play a catalogue of songs that Mark produced, and was an undeniable pleasure, and I shall never forget it. It was a major part of my life, and we had a wonderful time, absolutely wonderful time, and I think that I get the feeling that we probably gave quite a bit of pleasure to people. So that's it's even better still to get pleasure yourself and give pleasure to somebody else. Is, as we know, is quite a good working relationship.
I was certainly one of those people in front of the stage on numerous occasions on the times you've come to Adelaide, and yes, indeed, it was very pleasurable indeed. Some very, very great memories for people in Australia seeing you guys.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun over there, I have to say. I've got a great soft spot for Australia.
And I just the other thing that I took from Streets of Heaven, John, just to finish up, was how much your musical journey has changed since Never Told a Soul. Never Told a Soul did reasonably well in Australia, got quite a bit of exposure. But listening back to that when I knew I was going to say hello to you, it's really come a long way.
Oh yes. Well, I suppose really one just gets slightly better at putting ideas together and songs together and such like, and so I think that one has to go with the flow, so to speak, and I think the songs are a little different. The recording is a little different. And of course the personnel is a little different. So I suppose you add all that together. And I think that when I look back now to albums like Never Told a Soul or Glass, I mean they were done sort of relatively quickly. Whereas with this the Streets of Heaven album, I sort of took a bit more time. I think because the constraints of being in Dire Straits, I didn't really have a huge amount of time to get ideas together and to get the recordings out and to actually promote them. With Streets of Heaven, it was a lot more relaxed, and I think that probably comes across as well.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to quickly ask you about your association with Greg Pearl. You mentioned him before, and the live album you guys made in France is a lovely recording, and I only just stumbled across it recently when your new CD came out, and it sort of passed me by, but it's magnificent.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it was done actually. Rather, it was recorded by accident, because I think that without me actually asking the engineer of the gig, he had one of these simple CD recording machines, which I'm afraid I'm a bit ignorant about these kind of things, but and at the end of the show, later that evening or the next morning, he came up to me and said, John, he said, I recorded the gig last night. Would you like the discs? And I said, oh, okay. So he handed me about half a dozen CDs, which was the whole show, and then I was sort of slightly intrigued. I went into the studio and started listening to them, and I thought, oh, actually, this doesn't sound too bad. When you're actually doing a gig, you're very excited, and you're very much aware of the atmosphere in the place, and he's a fairly well-established Irish singer, and I bumped into him completely by accident a few years ago, and we had quite a lot of fun, playing live in Ireland and doing some gigs over in England and such like, and then this record came together, and he's now gone back to Ireland, and he's he's working over there. So it's a relationship which it might get resurrected at some point in the future, but for the time being, he's happy being where he is, and he's keeping that sort of very contained. He's a good singer. He's a very good singer.
He's indeed. There's some lovely interpretations of some old Dire Straits tunes on it, but one tune that jumped out at me was First We Take Manhattan, which, if my memory serves me right, was an old Kirsty MacColl song.
Well, I think it was written by Leonard Cohen, I think.
Oh, okay, I'm showing my age.
I don't know about showing your age.
You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds talk time.
In my set when I play, it really does. People know it, but we do a slightly different sort of interpretation of it. Get it a bit, get it more going a bit, put more energy in it. And it's a great song. That it's a very well crafted tune, which most of Leonard's songs are, of course.
Indeed. Well,
did you catch Leonard Cohen when he came down to Australia or not?
No, I didn't. I really don't know much about him, to be honest. He's sort of on the peripheral of what I've sort of been exposed to be honest.
Yeah, he did some wonderful shows in London, absolutely stunning.
I have friends that saw him and rave about the show.
Yeah, no, he had a set of musicians with him which were absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I mean, it was one of the best shows I've ever seen, actually.
Cool. Fantastic. On the subject of shows, I'm hoping that people's ears prick up in this part of the world, and maybe sooner rather than later we may see you come down and visit us again and have a play in Australia.
Well, I'd absolutely love to do that. And, I'm actually doing a bit of writing at the moment, but I've got every intention of putting the band back together in a month or so and just seeing what's what and going out and having a bit of fun. So if we can get down to your part of the world, that would be fantastic.
Magnificent. Well, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure to say hello, and I wish you all the best with a new record. As I said, I've really enjoyed listening to it over and over again, and it's been a real pleasure to say hello.
Thanks very much. That's very kind. Nice to talk to you, Michael.
Can I get you to do a quick tag for me?
Sure you can.
My show is called Sitting in a Bar in Adelaide.
Sitting in a bar in Adelaide. I like that.
You've got to talk about something you know about. If you can do me something along the lines of, this is John Illsley and you're listening to blah, 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 that would be lovely.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Hi, this is John Illsley, and you're listening to Sitting in a Bar in Adelaide, which I think is the most wonderful title for a radio show.
Thank you, mate. An absolute joy to talk to you. Once this goes...
You do not have enough credit to continue with this call. Please enter the area code and phone number you wish to dial, or press the star key for more options.
Hello?
Michael.
We dropped out then. I was pretty much finished, but I didn't get a chance to really say goodbye, so we'll try again.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what happened then, but I think sometimes with these mobiles, they're just sort of, I've got one of these new iPhone 4 things, and it's somewhat unpredictable. It just sort of suddenly cut out.
Decided to die. Actually, I just wanted to ask you, and you mentioned it before, one question that slipped my mind that people may not know so much about is you're quite an accomplished artist and very well respected artist indeed.
Yeah, well, I do paint a bit actually. I love it, and when the Straits stopped working at the fever pitch in 1992, 93, I picked up the brushes and said, right, time to be a painter, and that was yeah, well, I've had a bit of success with it. I've done some show. I did a show in Sydney actually in 2004, I think, or 2005, and then I did one in New York. Had one in south of France, Singapore, London. Yeah, I've done a few shows actually, and I love it. I mean, it's to me, it's just another part of yourself which you're expressing in a slightly different way.
That must be a very pleasant way to see the world, just taking an art exhibition around, and that would be lovely.
Yeah.
A lot easier than...
Check the pictures out on there's a new John Illsley website, johnillsley.com. You can check them out on there.
Yes, I have seen it, and I have had a look at it indeed, and I will I'll put that in the notes for the show, and folks can go and have a look.
Oh, great! Absolutely marvellous, fantastic. Yeah, there's a few. We sold a few in Sydney, that's for sure. So somebody over there has got a John Illsley.
Fantastic. Hopefully they're listening.
Well, let's hope so. That's where Adelaide reaches to your show reaches to Sydney, does it?
Well, it's available on the net after it goes to air, so it's available anywhere. So
part of a group, Michael, or are you independent?
No, all independent. I have the flexibility of being able to say hello to people like yourself that don't really seem to get any mainstream radio anymore, which is a bit of a bugbear for me.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid mainstream radio in England is somewhat controlled by a pretty small faction, actually, which is slightly worrying, but that's just the state of play at the moment. You know, we sort of rely on guys like you, independents as well, you know, to get the message out.
Well, the sad thing is that I've seen is commercial radio seems to think that there's no one over 20 years old that listens to the radio in the first place, or if they do, they just want to hear Stairway to Heaven played at infinitum, and I'm afraid, you know, there's a lot of people that don't fall into those two very, very...
I know. Well, that's our job, Michael, to educate them.
But it's, you know, a lot of people will bag the internet, but it's one thing that a lot of music that, like, you know, yourself is a classic example. I would not know that you have a new record out if it wasn't for the internet.
Well, this is. I think this is coming home to quite a few people, because the normal channels of getting the music out to the public, you know, they're sort of. You're right. They're sort of somewhat closed off unless you're a rap artist. You know, unless you're 20 years old, and you know, unless you come from sort of, I don't know, the back streets of Manchester or something. So I mean, you know, the internet is a fantastic machine now to be able to share your music, and I think that's probably where you'll see the biggest development of you know, of communication with acts and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I get a lot of traffic through Facebook and MySpace and all that kind of stuff, and through the website. I mean, it's really, really important now. But I still hold out the fact that the vast majority of people that buy the, buy the music still buy the disc.
Mm.
So,
but also, you know, on the other hand, that gives your real, true fans an accessibility to you that was never there before. So it really brings you closer to your audience, and that's a very special thing that really wasn't there 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, I think that's one of the strongest elements of it, is the fact that you are more accessible, and you can have conversation with the fans and stuff. And I do get asked fairly unusual questions from time to time, but we'll try the best to answer them.
Well, I do so appreciate you giving me the time to say hello to me today, John. And I know it's very early in the morning in the UK, so thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time. It's been an absolute joy to say hello.
It's a pleasure, Michael. Nice to talk to you.
And I will send a link to Janine, and she can once this goes to air, and she can give you a link so you can have a listen. But as I said, it would be a great joy to you if you happen to bring the band to Australia at some time in the future. Love to see you.
Yeah, we'll try and do that.
As you said, you have so many friends in Australia, and are remembered with much fondness by by a huge proportion of the population still.
Well, it would be a slightly different show than the Dire Straits show you saw last time.
I'm sure. Well, the last one in Adelaide was at the football stadium, which was, I think, at the time, broke the attendance record in Adelaide by, I think, a third. I think was just unbelievably huge.
Yeah, those big gigs are kind of interesting.
All right, John, thank you so much, and all the best. And again, thank you so much for your time. Great to say hello.
All right, Michael. Cheers.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
mate. Have a great day. Bye-bye.